episode number 237 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. My guest today is Marline DeRosso. Marline was born to Haitian immigrant parents. Destined to make her parents proud, Marline is a successful CFO, CPA, management business professional, educator, entrepreneur, and doctoral candidate. She can now add author to her list of accomplishment. What started off as an outlet to cope and express her feelings while dealing with infertility and child loss has resulted in her first published work titled It'll Happen by 30, a relentless journey of faith, delayed but not denied. On a continual mission to help others, Marline is very proud of her book. The book has capitulated her into the next phase and role of her life as an advocate for all things women. After launching her company, MCD Business Enterprise LLC, Marline is an entrepreneur set out to empower and help build confidence among her fellow female cohorts. She has coined the saying, "Where Women Matter." Marline has released her second book in honor of her twins, born via IVF, titled Kason and Kamden. Yes, we're twins, and I'm still me. The book aims to help young generation embrace what makes them different and unique. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Welcome to the podcast, Marline.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. How are you today?
Good. I'm so happy to have you on. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and also give us a background on your story, how you got inspired to write your book.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Marline DeRosso. A little bit about me. I am an infertility advocate now. It wasn't the original career or path that I chose, but after going through a 15-year infertility journey with my husband, I gathered up enough courage to write about it because as I was going through my infertility journey, I journaled because I felt like there wasn't a lot of people to talk to and I needed a way to cope with my emotions, and writing was one of those ways. So all in all, once my journey was over, I said, I have to figure out a way. I didn't write all of this for anything, for nothing. It should be able to help people. And slowly but surely, it birthed my book. And that has taken me on an infertility advocacy path, which I'm really, really passionate about and excited about. But prior to that, I have a 20-year management career. I am a CFO for a skilled nursing facility. We work in the corporate offices, and I, manage people, leadership management. So, and I'm also currently in school for my doctorate, and I'm seeking to earn the doctorate in leadership. And I want my dissertation to focus on women in leadership, but more specifically, how infertility affects the women leaders, because I know as a corporate professional person trying to rise in my career and dealing with infertility, it wasn't something that anyone talks about, or it's kind of hush hush, right? Just like infertility is altogether. So I wanted to try to see if I can tackle that as part of my dissertation. So wearing a lot of hats. I'm a mom of 3 boys, plus my one bonus boy. His name is Richard. He's been with me since he was 2. I've been in his life since he was 2. So I always called him my son that didn't give me any labor pains, right?
I love that. That's great.
But my 3 biological boys are all via IVF and infertility treatment. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about how the book was birthed.
I love this so much because, well, first of all, just giving it a voice and how many people really go on with this in silence. And luckily now it's getting a little better, but like back when you were going through it, it was really not talked about. Now you'll see more communities and people like talking on Instagram and actually sharing their stories really bravely. And I think that it's so powerful when people can hear the stories. So I actually want to go back to your story. How did it start and what did you go through?
Yes, and just to agree with you, that's one of the reasons why I started to journal. Like I mentioned, that there really weren't a lot of resources available out there. And I have to tell you, my doctor, all my practitioners were fantastic, but they're busy. So after going through your appointment, you don't want to feel like you're a bother and constantly calling. So really, there weren't a lot of outlets. Not a lot of people in your family talked about it. Not a lot of your friends were necessarily going through it. So just as back then I didn't talk about it much, I'm sure even if other people were experiencing it, it wasn't something that you just bring up in conversation just because of the nature, of the topic. So that's another reason why I wanted to make sure I get something out there that'll help as form of a resource so that people can, have access to information to help them while they're on their journey, which was good because when someone finds information that it's also not outdated, it's like, oh, I'm not going crazy. There is someone that actually went through what I experienced. So it kind of helps validate their own feelings, if you may, as it relates to their infertility journey. So I wanted to add that a little bit. And if it's okay, I'll continue with this question you just asked, referencing my own story.
Yeah.
Yes. So my story, my journey was about 15 years. My husband and I, we weren't really necessarily trying, as young folks. I was basically in college, just living your life, traveling. And I remember being early 20s, and my husband had already had my big boy, Richard. So at that point, I think we kind of figured, well, maybe it's not him because he already has children. So let's go and get checked out just in case. So at that point, I was young, and I remember walking into, and I don't know what pushed me to do it. It was just something in my gut. And ladies, you have to listen to your gut and go with that intuition. It doesn't, steer you wrong sometimes. So we ended up going to see a fertility specialist. I got a recommendation. And when I remember walking in there, and the nurses and everyone were like, what are you guys doing here? You're young. Just go and keep trying. You have time. Why are you here? So at that point, I said, I can appreciate you saying that, but I just want to check just to make sure everything is okay, because the last thing I want or would want is, by the time I'm in my late 30s, I show up and then you guys tell me, why didn't I come sooner, because it's too late or just a little bit more complicated. So the lady, I'll never forget her face. She goes, you know what? I never thought about it that way. You're absolutely right. Let's get this workup done. So that was basically the start of my journey. I was 21, 22 and went to that first appointment, had our, blood work done. My husband was dealing with a little bit of male factor. And I was diagnosed with PCOS. And that, the combination of the two kind of made it a little bit more tricky to start a family. And even with that, they said that it wouldn't necessarily be a big deal, but those were, the underlying factors that we were facing. So at that point, we did, all in total, we had 5 IUI treatments over a course of maybe 5 to 6 years. Because in between that, you get tired. The journey is very draining. It's financially taxing. Insurance doesn't cover everything, although at the time we had an insurance plan that covered 3 of the IUIs, but they did not cover medication. So those other 2 IUIs that I was telling you, because it was a total of 5, the doctor wanted to do a different protocol and had injectables. So there was a financial, strain with that on the cost of the injectable medication for those. So in between that, we bought a house, traveled. I went back to school, just living life, trying to figure it out. And then I ended up meeting up with my doctor because I said to myself, I said, this needs to happen by the time I'm 30, because if it doesn't happen by the time I'm 30, I really need to really dig deeper to figure out, what's going on. I wanted to take it seriously because by then, as a young married couple, we pretty much had already done everything. So it's like, what's next, right? So at that point, our next natural progression was to IVF. So we went ahead and embarked on an IVF journey. And our luck, we were successful on our first IVF. And I always joke about that because, again, we talk about the financial aspect. I remember picking a package. I don't know if those are available now, but what they had was a multi-cycle package for the IVF. And I remember picking one and I said, I bet you it'll be our luck we picked this and pay for this multi-cycle package, and it works for us on the first try. And Michelle, that's what happened. So that's what happened. It worked for us on the first try, which we were very, very excited about. But unfortunately, we ended up miscarrying, and I had to deliver our daughter at 22 weeks and one day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was horrible.
I'm
Horrible.
so sorry to hear that.
Listen, I can't even begin to tell you how that felt. And, just to experience so much joy and happiness and have that be almost immediately shattered. And, it was just a very difficult experience. And then not to say that, no matter what, all miscarriages are bad and it's a tough thing to go through. But after going through, at that point, it had been, I want to say 9 to 10 years already of trying just to find what is seemingly success, just to then, go through such a traumatic, experience. So at that point, we were faced with the decision on whether or not we try again. So we went ahead and did that. But in the middle of that, between acupuncture, therapy, prayer, crying, writing, everything, just trying to find some kind of solace and emotional comfort, because it was very, very difficult, very, very hard. So we made a decision to try again. And at that point, we went with the second IVF because we had that multi-cycle package,
right.
like raved about, that I paid for. So the only thing we needed to do was prove that there was no live birth, no live baby, which we were able to prove through documentation from the hospital, etc. And we went at it again. Our luck, we were also successful. And I have to say, although it was a multi-cycle package, everything with the IVF was covered, but the medications were not. So we still had to be out of pocket another $5,000 or so to cover the medications that were required. So we did IVF again. We were successful, thank goodness. We ended up with twin boys. Those are two of my 3 biological boys, Kason and Kamden. And they came very early. They came at 26 weeks and one day. And what I have to also add too, Michelle, is one of the reasons for the loss of our daughter and the early birth, the premature birth of the twins, was incompetent cervix. So, of course, I didn't know I had cervical insufficiency, which is what we're calling it now. Yeah. I didn't know, just like a lot of women, you don't know you have cervical insufficiency until, unfortunately, it's too late. So as a result of that, because my pregnancies were both healthy, there were no, premature labor, there was none of that. The issue was the cervix both times.
So they didn't figure that out on the first time?
Well, they did figure that out after the first time because I go into that a lot more detail in the book about what happened and how they found out about the incompetent cervix.
Because if they found out in the first time, couldn't they have prevented it with a cerclage? I know that they do something to kind of close it.
Yes, they do. With the first pregnancy, once they realized that my cervix was dilating, I did have to have emergency surgery to get the cerclage placed, but I was already I want to say 18 weeks at the time. So what ended up happening is I had to deliver because maybe in the midst of trying to close the cervix, they did the cerclage. And at that point, immediately after that cerclage surgery, I would not stop contracting. Mind you, I went into the hospital with no contractions because whenever a classic case of cervical insufficiency, you don't have any symptoms. There was no pain. There weren't any, there was no discomfort or anything for me. So when you go in, it's like, I guess between being nervous and we're not sure how long the cervix had been opening. Maybe some bacteria got in there because immediately when they closed me up, the plan was to just send me home like normal and be on bed rest. At least I thought. And until I delivered, but that wasn't the case. I never left the hospital after the cerclage because my contractions just never stopped. Until I ended up having sepsis and they needed to get her out because I went from one day to the next because they did my labs. Remember, you're in the hospital. So I don't mean to say remember, but when you're in the hospital, it's such an uncomfortable time already. but then you get no rest. They're always pricking and prodding and
That's
blood.
right.
Like it was just, yeah. So every day they were testing my blood, sometimes twice a day, and everything was always good until that one day they tested. And I think I had like 472,000 infection white blood cells, something. I don't
Wow.
know. They were like, emergency, this baby has to go. Your blood is bad. You're
Oh
going to
my God.
die. Like, so dramatic. I don't mean to be so dramatic, but that's how they told me. So at that point, that's why I had to deliver her in order to save my life. And there was no way she could stay in anymore either. So
Yeah.
knowing that, right, my IVF doctor was very proactive. He goes, okay, now that we know this, we're going to send you, we'll recommend a specialist at the University of Miami, Jackson Memorial Hospital, Holtz Children's Hospital. So that's where I went. And we did everything, Michelle, textbook preventative cerclage. I had the cerclage with the twins at 12 weeks. Surgery went off without a hitch. Perfect pregnancy, no problem. Until one day, just like the last time, you just have this, it's kind of like you're about to catch a cold. You know how when you're going to catch a cold, you just don't feel good. And it's even
Yeah.
before your
You can
throat
feel it.
starts to bother you. You just feel weird, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up going in, and that's when they found out that even with the cerclage, Michelle, my cervix started to dilate.
Wow. That's so
My cervix
crazy.
started to
Wow.
dilate with the
But
twins.
thank God they're here and it all
Exactly.
went well. And I'm really sorry to hear that you went through all of that. It really is such a crazy journey to
It
go
is.
through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It really was. And, just to go through it, because it's kind of hard to sum up 15 years in a few minutes, but I'm almost done. I'll do my best. I don't want to, keep being long-winded about it. But after I had the twins, they had a 4-month NICU stay because they were born so early. Because 26 weeks is very, very
Yeah,
early.
very
So
early.
one of the twins was 2 pounds, and the other one was 1 pound and 12 ounces. They were in the NICU for about 4 months, and I have to say, thank goodness, they're perfect. It's been a lot. They're 10 now. They just turned 10 in November, so they're thriving. They're doing well, and just to conclude the journey, it was we had to decide because we had frozen embryo left over, what we wanted to do, and of course I was afraid. I said, there's no way I would knowingly now try to bring it, another child into this world. I felt like I was setting myself up for failure and setting the baby up for failure if I tried to try again with this cervical insufficiency. So my husband, he was very, very sad about the whole thing because he felt like, the whole pregnancy experience and everything was taken away from me. And he wanted me to just have like a normal, or what one would consider a normal experience, and really push for us to try again. So I did some research and found out about another type of cerclage that um, they recommend it be done before you get pregnant. But the dilemma I had at the time was, well, I've never gotten pregnant on my own, and I didn't want to go and get pregnant again. Go and get this cerclage done, which is major surgery, just to try, and it may not work because I needed fertility treatment. But I got 3 opinions from 3 different doctors. It's called a transabdominal cerclage, where they go in and put the cerclage up higher via the uterus versus going in vaginally. Because when you're going in vaginally, you can only reach so high, right? But the other way around, they do it microscopically, laparoscopically, and then they, put the cerclage in basically at the top of the cervix, right at the bottom of the uterus, if that makes sense, instead
Yeah.
of at the bottom of the cervix. So we went ahead and did that, and then I was able to get my frozen embryo transfer done. And lo and behold, we have our little one. His name is Kevin Benjamin. He just turned 5 last week. And I have to tell you, Michelle, it was just a perfect pregnancy. We weren't able to have much intercourse or anything like that. I get into that with the book because you're just so afraid, or, you don't want any problems. But I worked all the way up until the last day, because when you have that transabdominal cerclage, you have to have a C-section.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked, my last day of work was Monday. My C-section was scheduled the Wednesday, so 2 days later. And then that Tuesday I went to pre-op. So I was up and about the whole pregnancy. It was
Oh,
truly
wow.
a miracle, if you ask me, So it's at the conclusion of that. I have the boys, and I said, I want to be able to give back and help other people, at least let them know they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way I went through this, for nothing, and not for nothing, but you know what I mean? Because, you have your kids and things like that, but you want to be able to give back and help. And that's what I hope to do with the book and my advocacy work and things of that nature.
No doubt. I think it's amazing that you're actually taking that and spreading a message to so many people who need it so badly. And speaking of miracles, I know that you really hold spirituality close to your heart. And I'll tell you the truth. I mean, I'm very spiritual myself, and I
Yes.
think that if you don't have that, it makes things very hard. And I've actually had a guest on the podcast who spoke about the brain on spirituality and how really linked to science spirituality is. People think it's like this woo-woo thing that you can't really understand or hold or get with your mind, but it is something that actually has been shown to help the brain. So talk about how that's really helped you through your journey, that connection, that faith.
Without my faith, I just don't know where I'd be. And I have to tell you, even though I had a lot of faith, a lot of spirituality, and I believe in something higher than me. Oh, Michelle, sometimes I was so upset. That
Mm-hmm.
question of why, how, I don't understand, what did I do? So I'm not
Which
even
is
going to sit
perfectly
here.
normal.
And I had to learn that. I learned that it's okay, to have those feelings and questions, because that's part of your growing and unlocking everything you need to know about why you went through what you went through. So I'm never going to say that it was always, I was always positive. No, absolutely not. Okay. But I can tell you that even in the delivery room, when I had to have my daughter and things of that nature, I had my rosary. My priest came and said a prayer for us. I believed, I prayed when the boys were in the NICU, same thing. We had blessed rosaries for them, just believing. And even the nurses, some believed, some didn't believe, but, in their own way, right? In their own beliefs, in their own religion, they prayed for us or sent us, positive thoughts or spiritual healing. And I have to tell you, that's what got me through. And it's funny because I work, like I told you, in like a corporate office setting. And when everything was happening, different people would say, oh, I'm praying for you. And, people at the office knew. So everybody was sad. And I remember, I think the boys were either still in the NICU or just came home. And I finally mustered up the courage to be out. Like I had a bank run. So I went to the bank. And then the lady at the bank said, I didn't know her. She knows who I am because of the company, but I never really interacted with her. And she said, I just knew everything would be okay. Since they told me about your issues, I've been praying for you, and we light candles for you, whatever. I was taking whatever it was,
That's
anything
amazing.
positive and spiritually connected to help us, get good vibes or whatever you want to call it. That's what we did. And there's also something to say, like I was telling you too, about that intuition and that gut feeling. And although sometimes I was upset, doubtful, confused, angry, frustrated, um, something inside, it just always felt like at the end of the day, I don't know why this is happening. I don't know when it'll pass, but it's going to be okay. So I had to always remind myself, even though that thought came in and left really quickly because I wanted to be mad and I wanted to be upset and I didn't want to participate in anything and all of that. I just had this feeling that I don't know why the death of an innocent child is what is supposed to be the lesson, if you want to call it that. But I just knew that everything happens for a reason, and I just had to stick it out. And that's why I didn't try to, what's the word, mask how I was feeling, right? Because you
Yeah,
have to go through it.
totally.
Because if you mask it, I know me. I know I can't go back. All of us can't go back in life to change anything. So if I don't allow myself to deal with and feel and embrace what I'm feeling on certain days, I am spiritually connected. Okay, just help me get through this. Read some positivity. Okay, great. On other days I wasn't. It's okay.
Yeah,
I had to
totally.
let myself go through it because I couldn't go back. I didn't want to look 2 years, 3 years down the line and be upset because I didn't properly grieve, in the past because of what? Life wants you to move on because unfortunately nothing stops just because you're dealing with your own traumatic, stuff, right? But I knew I had to stay connected spiritually, as hard as it was to do that. Sometimes in my church in particular, I attend the Church of the Visitation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and it is a church where the patron saint is Mary, which is, for mothers and things of that nature. So they did a really good job, rallying around me and praying and having, different masses in my honor with the kids and, things like that. So spiritually, I definitely felt people who were sending me positive vibes and affirmations and prayer and whatever you want to call it, because I believe in it all. It all works one way or another, right?
Yeah, and the thing too with prayer, it's not just like this kind of like I want my wish to come true kind of thing. Sometimes it's just about being spiritually charged, that you're able
Right.
to fill your battery to some degree so that you can get through the challenges that you're facing. Just that
Absolutely.
the comfort, the comfort of really connecting and having some kind of belief, even though it doesn't make sense. And you know what? And that includes being human and having days of anger and frustration and all of that. And what you said was so important, really acknowledging and allowing yourself to process your emotions without denying them is so important, because actually allowing yourself to go through the feelings that you're having without denying them is what the soul needs. It needs to be validated, it needs to be seen, and you need to, being seen is also seeing yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what you're feeling is real, right? Everything in life can't always be happy go lucky, which is why when you have those great days, you embrace them and enjoy them, right?
Yeah.
Because life, just because you believe or you're spiritually connected doesn't mean, you know, sometimes bad days won't come or weird things won't happen. But like you just mentioned, it's just part of your journey, and your spiritual connection helps give you the strength you need to just get through it, because it too shall pass. You
Yeah.
may not see that while you're in it, but you have to have that spiritual connection to help you through it.
I was thinking that phrase as you were saying that right before.
Yeah.
This too shall
Yeah,
pass. It's kind of like the good news and the bad news. You know what I mean? Like, because
absolutely.
sometimes good things pass, but that's why you embrace them when they come, and then
Exactly.
same thing for both. But in your book, do you pretty much explain your whole story?
Yes, I pretty much tell the entire story, and what was special about it is the way that the book is formatted. It actually has day to day, actual daily entries, right? Because just because you're going through infertility, the rest of your life doesn't stop. So I talk about, how my day at work was, like real time. Because there's one thing for someone to tell you a story and you're listening back to what they're saying versus experiencing it with them, because I'm writing down exactly what was going on that day. So you're either at a family function, you're trying to meet deadlines at work. Okay, how do I focus on what, my boss wants me to do? And I'm waiting for the phone to ring from the IVF clinic to give me some kind of result, or, having to be late because I have an appointment that ran long or needed to do a procedure, the interaction with family, trying to socialize, the relationship with, your partner, what that looks like, So I think that was what was really good about it, and some of the feedback that I've been receiving, because people felt like, oh my gosh, I felt the same way, or the way you described XYZ, I felt like I was there. So in addition to that, it's not only the entries. I had to basically put it together. Okay, the beginning story, this is, some daily things that went on, put in some filler information, what happened between after the birth of the twins and before wanting to try again. So it kind of takes you through a whole journey of the entire process and what life was like also at the time. And another reason why the book is important is because it teaches people that although you may not have experienced infertility or, have gone through it yourself, you understand what the process and difficulties are like, so that if you know someone or find out that someone is experiencing it, you kind of know how to help them. So I also say that the book is a good guide to teach people how to be a friend to fertility, and So that's one of the other focuses on the book, which I think is pretty neat. And I've had some medical professionals give me feedback. For instance, labor and delivery nurses I met at a signing that I have, some actual infertility, my infertility doctor, my infertility acupuncturist, where they provide the book as a resource to their patients as either, something of inspiration for them or something that will help them. Because I had one of the labor and delivery nurses say she's been on the floor like I have when all the other women go home with their babies that they delivered, but they have that patient that they are caring for that just had a loss, So she felt it was important that she got the book and used it as a resource for them to help their patients as well. So, the book kind of journals everything, chronologizes everything, and just kind of take you, through the whole journey with us. It's of course, as precise as you can be, because I didn't want it to be too big, but it kind of covers a lot. I'm really proud of it.
You should be. I mean, first of all, I think it's so brave to express something that is so personal, really,
Yes.
in order to help so many other people.
Absolutely. And one of the things that's also special about the book, and you're gonna laugh, is my husband contributed to the section about no sex, and more no sex, right? Because that's one of the realities when you're going through infertility treatments, that whole intimacy with your partner, and sometimes you have to abstain from it for medical reasons or just as a precautionary. And it was interesting to hear the male's perspective on and also just the male partner, right? What the experience was for him in supporting me, So
Yeah.
I thought that was really special too. And it is very, very private. And it takes a lot to finally be able to open up if someone's ready to be able to share all of that. So lots of vulnerability, in it.
No doubt. And when you were going through it, was it something that for a while you kept to yourself, or did you have a close knit group around you?
I kept it to myself for a long time. It's not until we were actually starting, maybe I want to say there was one lady who was always there with us because I found out she had IVF at work. She was one of my mentors, happens to be our HR director. So even in my 20s, she was who I would turn to because I know she had experienced it as well. And even then, whenever we would talk, it would kind of be like in private, not in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, no one knew. Even my siblings, some people at work, no one knew until I wrote this book what we had gone through.
Wow.
They were like, "What? You went through this?" My in-laws, some of them, nope. And I think what happened was because my husband already had Richard. I think people just thought, well, Marlene's always busy or she's always got something going on. When she's ready, they'll do it. I don't think they ever put two and two together to say, okay, well, why don't they have kids and what's going on? And this is what my assumption is. I don't know. No one has ever really talked to us about that. So I was lucky in that respect because a lot of times you do get a lot of pressure from friends and family on, when are you going to get pregnant? When are you going to have a children without them realizing that you're really trying and it's just not.
It's really sad.
It's just not happening.
It's very hard. I hear it all the time from my patients, and it's really, really tough because you're not ready, and you have a right to keep that personal. It's personal stuff. You don't have to tell anybody about it, but it's crazy how people feel they take such liberty to ask, like it's like and don't, and it's out of ignorance. It's not out of malice, but but it still makes it so hard.
It does. Yeah. It does. And I had a couple friends which ended up being godparents to my children. Once we got into like the IVF stage, I was able to confide in them. And what I appreciate about my few friends and sister and mom, eventually I told them because I had to have surgery too. So, you're going under, so you need your family to know what's going on. So what I appreciated about my friends were they didn't have the foggiest idea of what I was talking about. Okay. And they were so intrigued and showed empathy and cared that I was the one that ended up feeling like, well, I'm not going to call her and tell her this because I'm just going to bore her or take up her time. But that's why the book is important, to help teach people how to be a friend, because my friends were friends to me without knowing anything. So of course, when they got the book, they got to, read more and understand more. But I was lucky enough that when I was ready to tell, there were maybe a handful, not even five, maybe four people altogether that kind of knew, and just were along for the ride with me. And even then, I didn't tell them about every test or every result appointment. And because even then it becomes it's hard because you feel like you're jinxing yourself. Now people know, what if something happens, da 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 da. But and they, I have to say, were a little bit more involved, in addition to my sister, my mom, after the birth of the baby, that I lost.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, okay, and then the family that didn't know, they were like, oh, okay, well, this happens all the time, and just put your big girl panties on, you'll get pregnant again. And I'm like, you don't
Oh.
understand, because they didn't know, what I had gone through, to even have the baby. So, but yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, wow. I mean, first of all, I just think that I commend you for the bravery, because it really is like something that is so hard to talk about because it's so
Yes.
personal. And so, for people who are listening, would like to find out more about you and get the book, how can they find it?
Yes, they can find the book on my Instagram. There's a link to my site. So my Instagram is MCDBE, which is my initials, Marlene Sapodi DeRosso. So MCD and BE, B like boy, E like Edward. And the link is in the bio, and everything you'd like to know about me is there. I'm working on a fertility coaching program to be able to help women or men, families that are looking to build their family and just looking for insight or help, or trying to figure out what to do. So that's something that I'll be offering soon. And the link to purchase the book is in the link in my bio on the Instagram. But the website itself is happenbook.com, www.happenbook.com. But the Instagram link is the best way. It takes you to everything. So
And we'll have all of the links in the description of this episode and the episode
yes,
notes. So if anybody missed it or just wants to make sure, you guys can find it there as well. Marlene,
absolutely.
you are just so sweet. You just have such a sweet energy, and especially all that you've
Thank
gone through,
you.
you really emanate, you exude love. Like I could feel it from the Zoom call.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
just so happy to have you on to share your story. I'm sure there's so many people listening that this gives comfort to, just knowing or hearing and connecting with you on this level. And thank you so much for coming on to share your story.
No, I appreciate you having me. And, I learned a long time ago that when you put your mind to something, sometimes even though you've achieved it, the mission doesn't stop there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's with whatever you're doing, right? So I'm just happy to be on this mission. I'm on the other side of it now. And I feel that it's only right to be able to give back and help however I can, and help empower and advocate for those who probably are afraid to or can't. Because again, there weren't a lot of resources available, when I was going through my issues. So I'd like to, change that and be able to help other people on their mission as well.
Well, no doubt you're going to be an amazing fertility coach and helping so many people. So, again, thank you so much, Marlene.
Thank you so much. And right before we close, I just want to remind everyone the name of the book is called It'll Happen by 30. That's It'll Happen by 30. It chronicles my husband and I's 15-year infertility journey. It can be found, link in my bio on Instagram at MCDBE, and also on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold. And I wanted to share, Michelle, my twins, Kason and Kamden, that just turned 10. I wrote a book in honor of them. It's called Kason and Kamden. Yes, we're twins, but I'm still me. And it's in honor of just not only twins, but siblings, friend groups, people, because everyone wants everyone to be the same, in the sense that there's a pressure of conforming versus just being okay with what makes you unique. So I wrote that book in honor of them, just to say, hey, we're twins, but we're also different, and that's okay. So I wanted to share that both books are on Amazon. And if you're looking for a way to inspire the younger generation to be okay and stand out, and that's something definitely that we can get for them as well.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you so much for having me. Enjoy your day.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.